relationship with food really can impact our sleep, and our sleep can impact our relationship with food. Much of the focus when people are struggling with their relationship with food is around the food itself, but there's so much more to think about than the food and to focus on, and taking away that focus just from the food and the eating into other things can be really helpful. Focusing on the physical impacts of lack of sleep or poor quality sleep is that we have dysregulation in our hormones, particularly our hunger and satiety hormones. So we have a hormone called ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, and leptin, which is the hormone that tells us when we're full. These two particularly become dysregulated, so it means that after a poor night's sleep, the next day we're going to feel firstly more hungry, we're going to want to eat more food, but we're also going to have more cravings, so we're more likely to crave sort of the less helpful foods, more of the sugars type foods, snacky type foods, carby type foods. Nothing wrong with these foods, but the likelihood is that you'll be finding yourself craving for those foods, and what happens is then they don't understand why, and then they feel bad about it, and you know, you can get stuck in that sort of binge cycle whereby you're craving those foods, you're beating yourself up about it and think, well, I've kind of blown it, so I'll just carry on. Now, when you notice that actually there are different reasons why you might be craving, and sleep or lack of sleep might be one of them, then you can actually have that awareness and give yourself that compassion that actually this is what's gone on in my body, this actual physical reaction, it's nothing that I've done wrong, and perhaps I'll just do some things that can help work on my sleep. The other thing to think about is that what and when we eat can impact our sleep. So it's this continuous vicious cycle of relationships. So we know that certain things can really impact our sleep, such as regulated blood sugar, for example. Perhaps we're not eating enough during the day, and then we eat a lot in the evening, perhaps very close to bed. That can impact your sleep. So timing wise, at the same time, not having eaten enough throughout the day can send your blood sugar on a dip, and that can really impact your sleep. So you want to just make sure that you're eating enough during the day, and also regulating your blood sugar. And I talk about this quite a lot. So it's making sure that you're having enough protein with every meal, you're making sure you're having enough fibre, food with fibre in, so that's your veggies, your salad, your fruit. Also eating certain whole grains that are the slow releasing carbs and things that can really help regulate your blood sugar, as opposed to sort of always eating refined carbs. Now, I'm not going to demonise refined carbs, they very much can be part of the diet, but it's always about thinking about the bigger picture and just looking at your meal balance. It's something that I work on a lot with my clients to really help them tweak what they're doing. And it's not about beating themselves up, it's not about being perfect, and it's just about, okay, how can I tweak things to make things and notice if that feels better for me. So regulating your blood sugar can really help with the sleep aspect, and then likewise it becomes easier the next day to eat in a more balanced way. You know, from a physiological point of view, if you're malnourished from binge eating, so binging on sort of the less helpful foods, or malnourished because you're not eating enough foods, then that can increase your stress levels. And we know that high stress can impact sleep as well. Incidentally, high stress can also impact your weight. So not that I have a weight focus at all, but I know people always like to say, well, it's all about calories in, calories out. There's so many other things that impact your weight, and stress is one of them. Sleep is also one of them. So it's not as simple as just calories in, calories out. The other area is thinking about the psychological impacts of poor sleep. Your higher brain, which is your kind of frontal cortex part of the brain, which is very much involved in self-control, in decision making, in rational thinking part of the brain. We really need to have good sleep to rest that part of the brain so that we've got the energy to make those kind of decisions that can be helpful, because we know with lack of sleep we're much less likely to make helpful decisions anyway. And the lower part of the brain is very much that habitual sort of drive to seek pleasure and move away from pain. So it's that kind of real, it's the less rational thinking part of the brain. We want to reconnect with that higher brain, that's the bit that's very much involved with the self-control and decision making. And then of course, when you flip it to the other side, if you are constantly stressed and worried about your food intake, your body, your weight, that leads to stress, that affects your sleep, and that then will affect your eating. So it is that vicious cycle of your thoughts, how you're thinking is really going to impact all of those things. And of course, you're more likely to feel stressed if you've had less sleep, and then you might be prone to thinking these sort of unhelpful thoughts. You're less likely to think rationally. So lots of things to think about there in terms of sleep, your eating, and of course stress comes into it. So we really want to focus on ways in which we can improve sleep. We don't want to obsess about it. We want to have compassion with ourselves. Notice if we're struggling with our sleep. It's thinking, what are the things that we can do? Put some boundaries in place. And as I've mentioned, trying to balance your blood sugar but with a compassionate frame of mind. So what can we tweak in terms of that? Trying not to eat too close to bedtime, too much night eating, because that can impact your sleep. But again, you don't want to be going to bed hungry. So you want to make sure it's getting that balance. And for everybody, it's a little bit different. So you might need a snack, but you want a balanced snack that maybe's got some protein in, something that's going to sustain you. Thinking about alcohol, it's very easy to think, well, I need some, just have a glass of wine because I'm feeling stressed and it will help make me sleepy. But in effect, that's going to really impact your REM sleep, which is that deep restorative sleep. Trying to reduce alcohol consumption. Some people are more impacted by caffeine than other people. What we do know is that it really does reduce that adenosine, which is the thing that helps us get sleepy. So it does have an impact, and you really want to be limiting the amount and having it earlier on in the day. Remember that even decaf contains some caffeine, so switching to other things for later on in the day or reducing your amounts. Sometimes I say to people, if you are really a coffee lover and you really need it in the morning, stick to it early on in the day and maybe just having half a cup rather than a whole cup. Start reducing it down a little bit. Also with exercise is fantastic, but try to limit it to early in the day or to the morning or early afternoon. You don't really want to be exercising just before you go to bed at least. You know, give it a good few hours before. That can really impact your sleep. Also, sunlight exposure. Just getting out into the daylight as early in the morning as possible. Getting that exposure can really help reset your circadian rhythm, as can dimming the lights in the evening. So not having that sort of bright blue light coming out of your lights, try and dim the lights. But things like having exposure to the more amber lights, fireplace lighting can be really quite helpful. Just trying to avoid your screens. You've probably heard it before. But screens, for a couple of reasons, that the blue light emissions can impact your melatonin production, which we really need for sleep. And it can also, it's just also really stimulating. So doing emails or looking on social media and things like that before bed are going to stimulate your brain. Your brain is going to be working, and even though you might feel quite relaxed at that point, your brain is going to be ticking away. It's not sort of conducive for sort of get good sleep. Those are a number of things that can help with sleep, but it's around trying not to obsess over those things, but thinking what can I try and change up that would be a bit different, and try and get some consistency with it. So try one small thing at a time, add to it, rather than feeling like it's kind of that all or nothing. I want to move away from that. And just think about small steps that might be able to help you with your sleep and therefore help with your eating the next day. But also be consciously aware that you are eating enough, that you are trying to nourish your body and balance your body what it needs as well. So I hope that was helpful. I'd love to hear your comments. Does sleep affect you? Poor sleep affect you? Are you a good sleeper? Have you noticed the next day that you feel more hungry or have more cravings after a bad night's sleep?